Okay, so the next number in the graph, we have a natural log there. Now, a natural log is the same thing as our base graph, except that it has a base of e. An ln, or natural log, is a log with a base of an e. So because of that, we can use our same base graph that we had before for this one. Now, another thing we notice about this is the order there is switched. We want to have the x come first because when we use our transformation rules, we usually have a positive x plus or minus something. We don't have that here. We need to switch the order first before we graph. Switch the order, we get negative x plus 1. We're still not done yet because we need to make sure there's a positive x there because of the way our transformation rules work. We need to get rid of that negative somehow, and the way you can do that is by factoring it out. So I'm going to factor a negative out from each of these. If I take negative x and take out a negative on the outside, that means I'm left with a positive x on the inside. That's what I want. I want to have it with a positive x there, so that way I can apply my correct transformation rule. Now, if I take the 1 on the end here, positive 1, divided by a negative, that's going to give me a negative as a result, so that will switch the sign of the next one. You can always tell if you did it right by multiplying this back through again. Negative times x is negative x. Negative times negative gives you a plus 1, so we know that this is factored correctly. This tells us two things. First of all, we have a negative on the inside. Negative on the inside will flip this graph this direction, flips it this way over the vertical axis. So again, if you have negative on the outside, it does this flip over the horizontal, but we have negative on the inside, it's going to do this, flip it over the vertical. Also, it's going to take my graph and move it 1 to the right, because I have this, you look at what's inside what's the factored one after you pull out the negative. That's the one you look at, that's what tells you the direction, 1 to the right. So let's draw that. It's going to go 1 to the right. So here's our new vertical asymptote. That's going to go through at 1, positive 1. And then the graph itself, if we take the negative and we flip it, the graph is going to look like this dotted line right there. So that dotted line, what I did was I took the graph and flipped it over the vertical. So that means that the graph I draw here needs to look like this one. What I noticed about that is the graph is crossing 1 to the left of your vertical asymptote. So that's what I'm going to do here. It's not going to go 1 to the right because it's going to be flipped over this way. It's going to point to the left. So it's going to cross that right there, 1 to the left of your vertical asymptote. So 1 to the left is going to be right here. It's going to cross right through the origin. So it crosses right there, 1 to the left. The graph itself is going to come through that, and it's going to keep on going this direction. And so again, it goes to the left again because the negative that you have on the inside, the graph got flipped this way. So now it's pointing to the left instead. Let's look at the x-intercept. Crosses the origin 1 to the left of your vertical, which means that your x-intercept is actually going to be 0. That would be your y-intercept too. It would cross through at 0, 0. Your domain, talking about all the x values the graph is using. Now this time the graph goes to the left. So that goes towards negative infinity. The smaller one has to go first. So negative infinity is part of your interval notation. It's going to go all the way up to 1. But we're going to have a parenthesis on it. Again, you're never including the number where the vertical asymptote is. So it's only going to include basically a negative number. Negatives all the way up to 1 will be included. And again, negatives are okay here because if you have like a negative 1 in here, you have 1 minus a minus 1. So that by doing that, it gives you actually a positive number on the inside. That's okay. Those are the numbers that would be allowed inside of logs. We're only positive numbers.